most people would think, why are we in this god awful situation? And we are in this awful situation because we aren't being run by people who are being responsible politicians. We are being run by a guy who has been a career opportunist. Oh, I can't get my words right today. A complete career opportunist and an absolute serial liar. And why, just because he's suddenly Prime Minister, should we expect any of this to actually change? Not only that, but you may remember during Theresa May's term of government, the complete Conservative Party was completely split. We were in this situation because the Brexiteers, quote, had won. However, no one, and I mean no one, could actually say, even to this day, what Brexit actually means and what people actually voted for. You voted for Brexit, but that meant nothing. The Leave campaign ran a complete gambit from being like Norway to remaining in the single market and customs union to being having a free trade deal. And nowhere at all was this possibility even countenanced of a no deal. In fact, you have people on camera saying that no deal is a no possibility. And that was during the referendum. And yet here we are now, 4 years later, with 6 months to go, with the Conservative Party and the moderates in there, because let's face facts, what happened, and Boris Johnson's election completely got rid of all the moderates and left them with free market fundamentalists who are obsessed with looking at America and thinking, God, that's what we want to be. We want to completely get rid of all these regulations. We want to get rid of the crushing weight of big government. And yet, just yesterday, we went over that fantastic piece in the New York Daily Review, which basically laid out why our pandemic situation has been such an absolute mess. Instead of relying on the local connections of local councils, health authorities, Public Health England, and the services that are in there, as quoted by one of its representatives, the bread and butter of what his workers are there and paid to do. Instead, we have seen Johnson and his cronies continuously fork out private contracts after private contracts to essentially begin the faster privatisation of the NHS. This is the worrying thing that we need to worry about next year. And I keep on saying it's next January, because when it happens, Johnson will have to come up with a new policy proposal of what he's going to do. Because officially, at that point, Brexit will be done. So he will have to set out new aims and goals for his government. And that's where we have to start worrying. That's where we have to start panicking. Because already he's promised to, quote, level places up, ain't shaping out to be that well. And quite frankly, Johnson actually has to be completely mad. And I'm glad that I'm not alone in sharing this view, because William Keegan also shares it with me. This comes from The Guardian, and Johnson must be mad if he thinks Britain can afford a no-deal Brexit. Does Boris Johnson want to go down in history, or just down and down? At present, all the signs are that if he goes on in the direction that he and his fateful Lieutenant Dominic Cummings are heading, he will go down and down and down as having run the most disastrous government most of us can remember. Moreover, he will be forgiven by neither this generation nor the next. We shall come back to that, but first we must consider the big news of the moment. Chancellor Rishi Sunak's summer statement, a mini budget whose scope necessitates a redefinition of mini budgets. It was breathtakingly huge, but necessary, inevitable. There were gaps where an effort to rescue jobs and compensate for damages caused by the government-imposed depression helped many victims but neglected some. But, on the balance, a right-wing chancellor and a treasury whose traditional raison d'etre is to keep an eye on spending levels have tougher risen to the occasion, with a little help from our build, spend, end austerity Prime Minister. But how long is the occasion? One of the most eye-catching moments in the Chancellor's presentation was when he said the 25% collapse in gross domestic product in 2 months as a result of the lockdown, and had neglected the previous 18 years of economic growth. I have never accepted unemployment as an inevitable outcome, he said, before proceeding to warn of the sharp rise in unemployment in prospect, which he measures, let's face it, were designed at best to mitigate. Now that the occasion, the cliches, the unprecedented crisis, the need to do whatever it takes, as well as the European Central Bank's governor, Mario Draghi, promised in 2012 to help to save the Eurozone while Germany was asleep at the wheel. Borrow, print money, all hands to the pump. This is all very well, says the cautiously unbiased person of the half-empty virus-infective Clapham omnibus. But how is it going to be paid for? And when does the reckoning come? Well, the answer to that is the counterpart to the record-breaking level of government borrowing is the large amounts of savings. The level of savings in the depressed domestic economy is enormous. And with an average maturity of about 15 years on government bonds, which are purchased all over the world, the show can be kept on the road. But not forever. And this brings us back to my hero. My hero is Roosevelt. Johnson and his Chancellor, having known all his predecessors since Richard Mulligan in the early 1960s, with the exception of Savage Javid, who was sacked by the ruthless Johnson even before he had familiarised himself with the corridors of power, I am accustomed to the tradition of my colleagues in what we still call Fleet Street speculating about the dangers of a Prime Minister from a strong Chancellor. There is plenty of such speculation at the moment, and as long as he is dispensing money, digital or tangible, Shikak is riding a high. But he did point out that the reckoning, higher taxes, would come at some point. Moreover, history suggests that periods of crisis are followed by an increased level of taxation an economy has to bear. After both the First and Second World Wars, for example. Shikak voted for Johnson as leader. My view is that the two of them are in this together. At a time when the media is delighted reporting on U-turns, the two of them have an opportunity, which I fear are at odds against them taking to conduct a historic U-turn. One of them that would guarantee their place in history and alleviate the damage inflicted on our economy. We all know that Johnson more or less tossed a coin on whether to support Brexit, so it is clear from what Shikak wrote before the referendum that he thought his decision, he too voted for Brexit, was finely balanced. Well, it becomes more obvious by the day that a no-deal Brexit would be an unmitigated disaster. Both Johnson and Shikak have access to unpublished government forecasts for just what a disaster it would be. It is obvious to the Treasury that a no-deal Brexit and a Johnson's FDR ambitions are completely irreconcilable. Regrettably, this strange country has left the EU and is merely enjoying a period of grace. The sensible option is to conduct negotiations in a manner that keeps as close as possible to the EU. This, by the way, is what pollsters tell us the majority of Britons, who are now a majority, Remain now want. For the moment, however, the behaviour of our so-called leaders calls into mind a familiar classical quotation that may be familiar to Johnson. Quem Deus vult peri prius demat. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. And that is where we are. Johnson is he's the lunatic at the wheel, and many people are paying their bets on Shikak to take over after Johnson. Indeed, many are, as I think we may see, there is a good bet that Johnson may not make it past this year, and that he could be out by Christmas. I think that is a possibility because Johnson has generated no goodwill towards himself, and to replace him with old Ricky here, who again is riding somewhat of a high, despite, as I say, not really promising lots, but not enough to help the country out. So there's a definite danger there. But what happens? We generally don't know. I don't think that Johnson will last the year. If not, he may not last beyond halfway point of next year. I can't see him lasting beyond 2021. And certainly, Johnson will not be there for the next election. No way will the Conservatives, even countenance, let him stand. The guy who is responsible for all this, the coming catastrophe that's going to be Brexit, yeah, no way is he going to be allowed to stand for that next election. So the question is not how long, but when. And when is just a matter of time and careful planning. After all, the Conservative Party is always at its strongest when it's united and its weakest when it's divided. So, who knows? And now, obviously, Keir Starmer's in charge, and he represents a complete opposite change and sea tone to Johnson. And Johnson is, quite frankly, unable to handle him. And, as we have seen, a lot of papers are now saying, we might want Keir Starmer in charge.